It's a couple of minutes after 7 o'clock, but thanks for joining us tonight. Coming up on the show, what now for Formula One? Honda are leaving again. What is it with the Italians when it comes to go-karting and blitzing each other? We'll talk about that. Are the penalties that are being issued out consistent enough? And that's a word that Gary and I have used many, many times. Consistency. Mick Schumacher, Callum Illott are going to be making their debuts tomorrow in free practice one for the Alfa Romeo team and the Haas team respectively. That and a whole lot more. Welcome to F1 PitBox right here on Race Day TV. Oh, there we go. Looks like my picture's going a little bit crazy, but we'll check that out in a short while. Gary, it's been a while, my friend.
Actually, we had a small break, in this congested season, but lots of stuff going on. I tell you what, Formula One is interesting as ever.
Now, listen, before we actually get started talking about Formula One, I thought let's do a little bit of trivia. Let's test people's general knowledge here. Okay, it's quite significant regarding this week in the world of Formula One. There's lots of different things that are quite significant about this week. But who was Albert Goldenberg? That's what we want to know this evening. Who was Albert Goldenberg? Oh, looks like my picture's going a little bit crazy. So if it's
Okay, so we'll have to wait for Sasha to come back to us on that one, because to be totally honest with you, I'm not even sure who Albert Goldenberg was, but I'm also interested to find out. And we'll be moving on to the show as soon as we get Sasha back on screen. He's having some problems with his screen tonight. But interesting times for Formula One. I think we're going to chat about it all this evening. Of course, big news, of course, that Honda, as Sasha said, leaving Formula One again. So I'm looking forward to getting into that conversation right now with him. And of course, a whole lot more new drivers this weekend. I think a lot of people expecting to see Mick Schumacher in Formula One. He's had a stellar Formula 2 season so far, leading the championship, had some fantastic races. And, a man that's maybe come under some sort of criticism of late, not being sort of aggressive enough and what have you, but really just being a superstar in terms of just getting the car to the finish, scoring points in every event basically that he can, and putting himself in a fantastic position to win that Formula 2 championship. So looking forward to seeing him tomorrow. In free practice in an Alfa Romeo, and just give us a good indication of just how he's going to be able to go. Of course, the big thing is going to be how he compares to Kimi Raikkonen in that car, if he's taking Raikkonen Giovinazzi's seat, which we assume. So an interesting one and a good sort of indication as to just where Mick Schumacher is. And this is no doubt in preparation for an anticipated debut in Formula One next year. So, of course, already Formula One, a series where seats are limited. But I think tomorrow's test will sort of give people an idea, and I think, as I said, definitely an opportunity for these drivers to prove themselves, and also an opportunity for the teams to actually see how they perform at the beginning, or certainly as part of a Grand Prix weekend.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Gary. I must say, I'm very, very excited for it. Big rumor is that it's going to be Raikkonen and Schumacher at Alfa Romeo. Kimi was asked that today, and he said, I have not signed any contract. It's typical Kimi fashion, but that is Thursday. Tomorrow's Friday, and things could change. Very good evening, Kathy joining us, Candace Schmidt joining us. Keep your comments coming through. And the question is, try not to open the Encyclopedia Britannica on this one. But who was Albert Goldenberg? Okay, what is the significance? We'll get to that in a short while. Gary, let's go back a little bit to Russia. Just the one thing, and I mentioned it right in the beginning, consistency when it comes to delivering penalties. There was a huge fracas about Lewis Hamilton getting the penalties for his illegal start procedure on the right-hand side of the circuit. And I'm going to ask Fritz just to call up, because we've got an image of what the regulation says. And if we look at this and read just the 19.1, practice starts may only be carried out on the right-hand side after the pit exit lights And for the avoidance of doubt, this includes any time the pit exit is open for the race. Drivers must leave adequate room on their left for another driver to pass. Gary, of course, it's a regulation, but it is also merely just a guideline, because if you're on an anti-clockwise circuit like Brazil, for example, then you have to have different kinds of wording.
Yeah.
What did you think of what Lewis Hamilton did, and do you think the penalty was correct?
Well, look, at the end of the day, we've used to them, doing practice starts at the pit lane exit, at the lights, as you say, or just near to them, and if it is a track, as you quite rightly said, going clockwise, on the left-hand side of the circuit and leaving the exit of the pit lane open. I think the big thing for me was the one that he did further out in the circuit, sort of past the pit exit and onto the track. For me, that was probably the one that you could have looked at and said, well, that may be a little bit dangerous. So perhaps a sort of double penalty wasn't required, but at the end of the day, the regulation is there for a reason. But you're correct. Sometimes they aren't clear. But to have done nothing wouldn't have been the right thing. If somebody was sharp enough, you probably would have come under protest by one of the teams if they had their eyes open and had seen it. So they had to dish out something. There's no two ways about it. Because, as I said, the second one for me was the one that was really a big problem. And unfortunately for him, he was asking the team for clarification. It wasn't as though he wasn't aware of what was going on around him or anything like that. But just did do it in the wrong place and had to get a penalty, unfortunately.
Yeah, and amazingly, just looking at it, Mercedes have actually come out and said, we knew that there was going to be trouble. And I want to bring up, we've got a picture of actually where Gary was talking about, where he did the second start. And that image, let's just have a look at it. And then you can clearly see it's a violation of the regulation on Lewis's penalty. And also, you've got to look at, there you can actually see where Hamilton does the start. And then, of course, the pit lane exit is at the designated area on the left-hand side. So, I mean, that's exactly where he made the mistake. But, Gary, if you go to the race before Russia, when Kimi Raikkonen made that drive into the pit lane and crossed over the white line, he got the 5-second penalty, and he went for what or whatever. But he also knew that that was going to be a penalty. For a guy like Lewis Hamilton, I think the extra 5-second penalty was also the fact that actually crossing the lines, perhaps to enter back onto the track from an illegal place on the circuit.
Yeah, look, that's the thing, and these things, unfortunately, he gained no real advantage by doing what he did, but it's really a safety issue, and these cars are quick, and where he did the second start, for example, I'm not sort of hanging on the second start for now, but the cars are really accelerating at a hell of a speed, and of course, you just don't want any sort of unnecessary sort of risk put out there by anybody. So it was a tough one. The first one, again, you just got to comply, as you said, crossing over certain lines that are there. Again, they're there for safety reasons. There's a track that's been designed. They've looked at it. They know where you can go. Should you be exiting the pits? And it just comes down to enforcing the safety procedures. As I said, it was one of those things where, like Kimi, it didn't really change much in his life to go into the pits at that late stage, but cross the lines, and it is what it is, and I just think to get the penalty. It was unfortunate for him. I mean, Hamilton wanted to take this win and do something special on the weekend, but it's just the way that it goes. I don't think it's been an intentional sort of attack on him or by any stretch of the imagination. It's just the stewards on the day. That's how they read it, and that's what he got. That's what he's got to deal with.
Exactly. There's no conspiracy against Lewis Hamilton. Let's stay with Lewis Hamilton because, of course, history could be made this weekend, and we'll talk about that when we look forward to the Nürburgring Eifel Grand Prix race. But some interesting comments coming out, Gary, over the last couple of days. So Jackie Stewart coming out saying he wouldn't put Lewis Hamilton in his top three. He cannot compare them. He doesn't believe he's close to Fangio. He doesn't believe he's close to Jimmy Clark. And then Jody Scheckter coming out and saying, I disagree with you, Jackie. He definitely is there. There will always be a continuous debate for the rest of our lifetimes and lifetimes to go forward as to who the greatest of all time is. Is it Fangio? Is it Clark? Is it Schumacher? Is it Lauda? Is it Senna? Is it Hamilton? Is it Vettel? Gary, but interesting comments coming out, and just maybe the different kind of opinion where it seems as though Jody Scheckter's is a lot more progressive than someone like Jackie Stewart.
You know, you can kind of understand where Jackie Stewart's coming from as well. Just looking at the era that they all raced in, obviously a very different time. Different approach was required, etc., etc. And my view on it is always, as you said, this debate will always rage on forever and a day. But at this particular point in time, Lewis Hamilton is the greatest. I mean, the record book showed it. The race wins are going to show it. I mean, equaling records we probably never thought were going to be equal. We've never seen anything like sort of Schumacher winning the amount of races he did. Now we're seeing Hamilton do it. At the end of the day, it's also about putting yourself in the position to be able to achieve what he's achieved. And yes, Schumacher did it a different way. He built the team around him, took Ferrari from a point where they just weren't able to win or compete for championships, and built the team up over a number of years and got them to do that. And that's always probably one of those things that people look back very fondly on and say, look what Schumacher did. Hamilton, on the other hand, saw an opportunity to be in part of the best team in Formula One, and has made the best of it and gone out there and won these titles and won championships. In this day and age, what he needed is what he's got. And he didn't play around. He made sure that he had that, and was able to use his ability to go and win the kind of Grand Prix that he did. We've spoken about Alonso before, and he didn't manage to achieve any of that, and hopped around from team to team, probably from a raw talent point of view, you'd say, or in driving point of view, just as good. But I don't think just as good as organising what he needed to from a team point of view and in the back end to be able to go win races. You've seen Sebastian Vettel fall apart twice now in his career. Once at Red Bull and then now at Ferrari this year. Whether it's the team's fault or the driver's fault or whatever it is, it's happened to him twice. Now Hamilton hasn't faltered like that. He had that season at McLaren when the car wasn't good, saw the opportunity at Mercedes-Benz, jumped at it, and has just made it work for himself.
Yeah, 100%. Bernie Eccleston also came out with a couple of comments as well, which are quite a lot of fun to read. We'll leave them up to your own discretion. But I think the most diplomatic one that has come out, Gary, from Jean Todt, the president of the FIA, and he says, they are two great champions, but they all also represent two different eras. That is what you call diplomacy, and maybe that is why he is the chairman of the FIA. Now, before we start talking Formula One and this weekend, because I'm so excited, tomorrow morning it's just all going to be happening. Gary, what a shambles happened in Lonato in Italy at the World Karting Championships over the weekend. Here's the video, then we'll talk about it. I mean, I just watched that over the weekend, and I went, I cannot believe my eyes what I'm actually seeing. I'm going to ask your perspective in a short while. But for those maybe if the first time you're seeing it, just to let you know, those were parc fermé conditions. The guy who ran up and tackled the taller guy who tackled the shorter guy, okay, didn't finish in the race. His name is Luca. I don't know his surname, and I'm not interested. Thereafterwards, the man wearing the black jacket who went and tackled the same small young guy is the father of Luca, who owns the track. These are the World Kart Championship finals. Okay. Prior to this, the guy who got tackled on the racetrack, him and this Luca guy most probably got into a tangle, and this Luca guy had to retire from the race. This guy took the front part of his bumper and tried to throw it onto the track into the oncoming go-karts. And then, that's what happened. And then thereafter, what happened in parc fermé. Gary, it's exploded all over the internet. You can watch it and we can laugh about it. But there's a serious predicament to all of this, and it is very, very disgusting to actually see, unfortunately.
Well, you know what, it just takes me back to an incident, and it's a little bit different, where Tony Stewart in a competitor in sprint cars in America had an incident, and the driver walked up to Tony Stewart and actually got caught under Tony Stewart's wheel and was killed. And, you know, if it's your kid out there racing and somebody else is throwing things like that at the track, and something happens and it hurts your kid, I mean, you can only imagine. So it was just a totally stupid thing to do. And then, of course, obviously what ensued afterwards in the pits was just, I mean, you know, it's just you know, for what it is and what karting is and what it's trying to do to bring up young drivers and bring people into motorsport, you know, just obviously wasn't the right thing at all. And the fact that, you know, and I also only read the story once I'd seen it, because I mean, I don't really keep an eye on the World Championship karting or anything like that, but you know, to see the owner of a circuit behave like that as well, I mean, just, you know, you kind of like understand what, you know, what the mentality was and what have you over there. Just an absolute joke, in all honesty. But you know what, having said that, I mean, you look at NASCAR and you see things erupt in NASCAR pit lanes. It's not really sort of frowned upon as much over there in the States as it is maybe in some other places. But I think in this case, as I said, you know, if you the path that he threw back into the circuit could very well have injured anybody else, apart from the driver that he had the incident with. So it's one of those things. It's an unfortunate thing. His racing career is over. You know, there's no way he's going to be able to do anything in racing. That's just how it is. And with a temperament like that, you know, it was never going to work out. It sort of like reminds you of Fernando with that brake lever grabbing in MotoGP, you know. I mean, he's managed to kind of sort of scratch his way back into contention and won that Moto3 race a couple of weekends ago. But I mean, the guy's careers are messed. You know, for a second of sort of rage and madness, and you know the normal stories. You know, when you're that pissed off, you keep your helmet on and go and cool down somewhere, and then, you know, when it's, you know, you really take it off and get on with it and do whatever you need to do within regulation. Go and protest and let the stewards deal with that kind of stuff. So just a very bad advert for motorsport and karting. You know, of course, social media and the internet's going to go mad with something like that. But yeah, I mean, all I can say is the guy's didn't get very far in his career. He's managed to put a stop to it right now before it's got any further. So, you know, well done to him for messing it up before it even started.
Yeah, done and dusted. I just want you to try and work out the common denominator here, Gary. For Martiningo, this guy's name's Corderi, Fenati, and of course there was also the IndyCar driver Ferrucci. What's the common denominator there? They all look
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know exactly. Listen, we can laugh about it now. This young kid did go on and apologize for his behavior and etc., and a whole lot of things. At the moment, we don't know what's going to happen. He apologized and he got slammed on social media and eventually withdrew his, didn't withdraw, but deleted his post. That's his racing career done. I mean, what's going to happen with that track as well? I think it's going to take a while for them to figure out what's going on. Now, Gary, the biggest news that has happened in Formula One since they arrived back in 2015, now they're exiting at the end of 2021 again. Honda. And the timing is very, very peculiar, in my opinion, Gary. Honda leaving Formula One again, just when you think they are that close, together with Red Bull, to actually go and beat Mercedes.
Sasha, I've got to be honest with you. When I heard the announcement, yes, the timing and having the Concord agreement just signed and all that sort of stuff going ahead, and then putting out, to be honest, I wasn't actually surprised, because you know, I've been reading and you know, sort of articles and trying to understand what's been going on with Formula One and this engine situation for a while, and I've got to be totally honest with you. You know, you always sort of felt that you've had a grip on where motor racing, Formula One is going, and all the rest of it. But with what's happening in the world now with electric vehicles and all this sort of stuff, no one seems to really understand where it's all going to go. And you know, and the article I was reading was about Honda talking about the loss of margin, you know, with the advent of electric vehicles coming along. And the cost of developing them, etc., etc. And, you know, it may be the excuse, who knows, But when I, as I said, when I heard that and having read that previous article, it wasn't a big shock. And I wish obviously Honda had been able to achieve what they wanted to achieve in Formula One. And who knows, maybe next year they may be able to do that. We don't really know yet. But I think for me the bigger picture is that it's a worrying time for Formula One in general. I've got to be totally honest with you. It's not that this thing is set in stone and there's any guarantee that things are going to keep on working like they are working right now. And if one manufacturer is thinking like that, it could well be that there are others going to start thinking like that. And we've seen series in the world where we have one manufacturer pulling the plug, and others follow suit. Unfortunately, these things happen. Even if there's a massive fine to be paid within that Concord agreement, you probably find it's going to be well worth it for them just to pay the fine and get on with life. Who knows? But for me, anyway, the biggest problem with Formula One in the last couple of years, and I think I've been, you and I have spoken about a lot, whenever we've been, wherever we've been speaking about it, is the engines haven't been great, and for sure the spectacle has been lost to a large degree. And the other end of it is that the engines have just become so expensive. I think that they've outpriced themselves, and that's the big problem. And that's why Honda's going, and they've just, at the end of the day, to justify the spend on Formula One is becoming difficult. And as I said, the question is, who else is looking at it like these guys are looking at it, and who else is going to come in at this level? So now you're into a point where you're just stuck with what you have. So not a surprising decision. Obviously, a decision that's and you've got to say there's two teams that are being severely affected by this now, and teams that have really come on, certainly in Alpha Tauri's case, in great strides. I think maybe Red Bull wanting a little bit more out of the car for sure this year. But this is worrying times for Formula One. And I thought about it this week as well after hearing this news that Bernie selling out when he did a couple of years back, and the man that made it what it is today, you've got to say, in terms of the show and this what Formula One is in the world. Call time on it, even at his age. I mean, he wasn't going to give up at any time, but he decided that was the time to get out, and it was after the introduction of these new engines in this new era. So maybe Bernie at that time knew something that we all didn't, and decided to call it a day in Formula One for whatever his reasons were, but maybe they weren't the wrong reasons.
Listen, we all know that Bernie Ecclestone is a very, very clever man, and I think he was adamant, and he was so against this hybrid technology at the point of where it was going to go. He had no problem with the KERS system, and that was all cool. All of a sudden, when they decided on 2014 that they were going with this electric power hybrid V6 turbo, Bernie Ecclestone said no. And my whole theory on this, Gary, and it's pretty similar to you. They have outpriced themselves. The irony or the hindsight is that when the new regulation or engine regulation of 2026 comes into play, that's when it should be this engine that we've got now. They should have stuck with something similar to what they had in the V8 era, and perhaps added more KERS. But they've actually jumped the gun, and it's cost so many hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of R&D for the likes of Mercedes, for Renault, for Ferrari, and for Honda to try and get these engines to the perfection that they are. They are unbelievable. They're actually too good. That's the problem. But the cost involved is crazy. And Honda make the announcement, bye-bye Formula One. And what do they do the next day? Full commitment to IndyCar Series, which has got no electric technology. And this tells you a story that their R&D, when it comes to electric and hybrid technology, has got to be from their road-going departments as opposed to Formula One. Afford Formula One anymore. And earlier on this year, Gary, there was all of the talk about perhaps Mercedes leaving Formula One. And, the timing is that the Concord agreement is there, and it means that we've got the same engine technology until the end of 2025. And Gary, if you look at things now with Honda withdrawing, with Ferrari on the back foot and Renault slowly getting there, I'm sorry to say, but you might as well sit and go, Lewis Hamilton, world champion, 13 times, 200 Grand Prix victories, end of 2025. I do not see anything changing in 6 years from now, and unfortunately I think this is massively detrimental and harmful to the world and the sport of Formula One.
Well, I'll tell you what, when you talk about Hamilton winning or a Mercedes-Benz car winning for the next 6 years, I don't think you're wrong. I've got to agree with you. And there's so many other regulations that are making it difficult, tokens, etc., whatever it may be, to get your engines up to spec. But again, it comes back to the cost and what it's costing these guys to be able to do that. It just doesn't make sense anymore. Where it goes, we can debate. And as you said, staying with a V8 or V10 engine or whatever it may have been, with extra curves for sure, was right. And you've had people like Christian, and I rate Christian Horner, is a really smart guy, a racing guy. And he's also said, we need to just go back to normal racing engines. But at the end of the day, the manufacturers are driving Formula One at the moment. It's a totally different situation to the 70s, 80s, where yes, they were involved, but you were not being driven by the manufacturer. You had guys coming in as engine suppliers, guys left, but you were able to run these things without the massive backing. And the sports become too dependent on them. And the biggest problem right now, you can even throw Formula E into this right now. Formula E is doing their thing. It's fully electric. It's got everybody involved. And that's where it's all happening. And leave them to do it. Listen, if you don't like it, whatever, that's your problem. But exactly. That's where it's going on. Leave that stuff to Formula E. They've got the rights for the next 30 years or whatever he signed up. Who knows? Like I said, I don't pay attention to it. I don't like it. I don't think it's great. But Formula One's got to be Formula One again. And I think Formula One has lost a lot of what it's about. And who knows where they take it? But it's the first time where you really believe that Formula One has a big problem. And you've got other categories. And I'll be totally honest in my opinion. MotoGP this year, whether it's because of Marquez not being there or whatever it is great stuff. Racing is good. It's exciting. There's characters in MotoGP. Formula One, and I hate to say it because I love Formula One, but they're losing their way, and the world, I just don't think, can justify spending what they do on that type of racing anymore. So it would be cheaper to have a better engine, a better sounding engine. It would be more. How can I say? The drivers be looked at sort of the gladiators that they're supposed to be looked at and revered at. But with these motors and these cars, we don't have that anymore. You have Formula One drivers themselves being outspoken about it. Vettel, how many times have you heard him talk about it? A lot of the guys have said these things are not nice. So why they keep pursuing it? We know why they keep pursuing it. It's manufactured.
Because manufacturers say that's what has to happen. And Max Mosley, when he was in charge of the FIA, said, do not allow the manufacturers to dictate the sport. And he kept on that and kept on that. And all of a sudden, 2008 happened and there was this world market crash. Toyota pulled out, BMW pulled out, whatever. There was still Formula One, Gary, because it had a solid foundation and you could still have a Cosworth engine. You could go somewhere else and get some other kind of supplier. At the moment, there is no chance that anybody else can enter the world of Formula One. Everyone says, but Porsche's got the technology. And what about Toyota? And I'm going, do you guys not understand that there's now this budget cap? These guys have had 6 years of development on this phenomenal package power unit. The Toyota have just won a Le Mans game. I looked at the power output and how this car actually works. And yes, I know it's an endurance vehicle or whatever. There's no chance Toyota can, on the budget that is prescribed to Formula One nowadays, can enter. We are stuck and left with Renault, Mercedes, and Ferrari until the end of 2026. And Stefano Domenicali, who's coming in to replace Chase Carey, and he's a racer, together with the likes of Ross Brawn, are going to have to make a strategic decision, Gary, before the start of next year's 2021 Formula One is going. Otherwise, I do predict there is going to be, I won't say anarchy, but there's going to be some kind of revolt.
Well, it's basically now left the door open for another category, whether it be two wheels, whether it be another four-wheel category, whatever it is, IndyCar, or whatever, to actually make a massive impact in terms of the racing world. You've also got to look at NASCAR. You look at the supercar series in Australia. They've stuck with their V8s. They're going to keep the show going because it's about a show at the end of the day. And I just don't think that Formula One has looked at it like that. And you've got to believe that a person like Ross Brawn has been involved with iconic cars himself, designing some of those iconic cars, Jaguar sports car, Formula One cars, etc., etc. Surely he understands this. and Domenicali as well. But again, just how dictated to are they by the manufacturers, and this is where it all goes bad. And in my opinion, to see another manufacturer drop out within this period is not going to be a big surprise either. So a car like Renault and a team like Renault may also. Then you're stuck with 3 engines that cost you a fortune. Two engines, sorry. Then what's the point? It's crazy to sit here and talk like this, but if you're really trying to think forward, that's where it all sits.
I couldn't agree, and unfortunately, there has to be a strategic decision that the teams are going to have to agree by the beginning of the 2021 season that either they're going to change what they decided up until 2025, or they're going to do something. They're going to have to find some kind of strategy. The last point in this, Gary, is a lot of people have been asking me, going, oh, geez, okay, well, now if Honda pull out the end of 2021, and there's talk that Honda might help out going forward, or Red Bull could buy the IP of Honda going forward. We saw what happened with Braun, but that's another story. The only option Red Bull have at this stage, together with AlphaTauri, is going back to Renault, because Mercedes have got their quota. Haas and Alfa Romeo are going to be staying with Ferrari. That's 3. Renault's only got themselves. McLaren goes to Mercedes. They're going to have to go back to Renault from 2022. And if you think about how that relationship and that divorce happened, Gary, there are many, many fences to be mended.
No, look, it's obviously didn't end well there, and we know the reasons for that. It's just it's going to be a tough one. But you've got to go back in hand and cap in hand, should I say? Sorry, and try and go and do something. That's all you can really do. And I just want to just quickly touch on it one more time. The only sort of other option is for Formula One to sort of implement some sort of like road going derivative type of deal, and handicap these engines. To the point where you've got this equivalency formula going and allow other people to come in, because if you don't have somebody else coming in with an option, you did, and this is where they've got to go. You've got to pull sort of, dare I say it, like the NASCAR move, where, well, listen, you're too fast, we're pulling you back, and that's just the way it's going to have to be.
I totally agree. Where they are right now, they actually need to sit there and say, okay, Ferrari, we know you've got a problem with your power unit. Bring us your 21 power unit. Renault, give us your 21 power unit. Mercedes, give us your 21 power unit. Honda, give us your 21 power unit. Put them on whatever dyno machines that they have to do. Check everything or whatever. Lock them and say, all of you have got 1,050 horsepower. Bang, 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 bang. There we go. Now go racing. Because at this, the way that it is at the moment, as I said earlier, you might as well just engrave Lewis Hamilton's name until the end of 2025.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, let's calm down.
Yeah.
It's
probably one of the most frightening times to have looked at Formula One. It's you could never have imagined that we could have been in this situation. And I get your passion. I mean, this has been a big conversation in my life the last week as well. It's just unbelievable that we sit where we sit. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. I remember in 2008 when Toyota pulled out and BMW pulled out, and I sat there and went, oh, well, the world's collapsing. But I sat and went, hold on a second. Mosley sat there and put the regulations together and said, that's fine. Other people can still play in this game. That was the difference. Nobody at the moment, Audi, VW, and the whole VW group, there's no one that can jump in all of a sudden. Toyota, there's no one who's going, oh, okay, let's go into Formula One.
And to be honest with you, why would you want to? Because you've got this Mercedes dominance that's happened at the introduction of this era. Mercedes has just dominated everything, and now to go and throw money, Honda's proven it. You've got to go there, throw big money in it, try and get on with Mercedes-Benz and onto a level with them. It's not easy. It's a very, very different world today.
No, it is very much. Okay. Gary mentioned it earlier when my camera went a little bit crazy, but let's just bring it up as well. We've got Mick Schumacher. This is image number 6, by the way. Fritz, thank you very much. Mick Schumacher, Callum, Illott going to be making their Formula One debuts tomorrow. Mick Schumacher for the Alfa Romeo team. They're all part of the Ferrari Driver Academy. Gary, can you believe it? 20 years ago today, The 8th of October, Michael Schumacher won the Japanese Grand Prix in 2000 and became the first Ferrari world champion since Jody Scheckter. This whole weekend is just a little bit like, I don't know if the word is ethereal or just mythical in a way. You know, you've got Schumacher, then you've got Schumacher's going to be on the track. You've got Lewis, who could perhaps equal Schumacher's record. It seems like the stars are aligned, but it's Formula One. Anything can happen.
Yeah, exactly. And as I said, you know, it's a great opportunity for both of these guys to see. And I think, listen, for sure, Mick Schumacher's case, there's no doubt that you know, this is really part of the plan, and to understand where he's going to be at over a Formula One weekend. I do expect to see him in Formula One. There's no doubt. The brand, the Schumacher brand is so powerful, and if he's got the ability to be in Formula One, you know, he's going to be there. But you know, I'll take my head up to the guy. You know, yes, he's Michael Schumacher's son, but he's been doing a lot of this on his own. You know, very sadly. And yes, I'm sure a lot of good advice, and the connections in the motorsport world are probably, you know, unparalleled. But at the end of the day, and he's had to get on and do a lot of this on his own. And so I support the guy, and I think he's done a great job in getting to where he's got to right now.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I must say also to Callum Illott, and the beginning of the F2 season, Gary, and I was watching Mick Schumacher, and I went, whoa, you're going to have to up your game, young man, because, you know, yes, you're being a little bit quicker than your teammate, but you're not right up there, and his qualifying wasn't so fantastic. And then all of a sudden he turned a corner, and he's gotten better and better, and he's leading the championship. You know, he just needs 2 good results in the final two races, or final 4 races, and he should be the Formula 2 champion. But I want to talk a little bit about Callum Illott, because this kid is also fantastic, and he's definitely putting his hand up for a place in within the Haas team, or a future Formula One drive. So, I mean, we've got these youngsters that are coming through. We've seen it with Lando Norris, we've seen it with Max Verstappen, we've seen it with George Russell, you know, maybe now Mick Schumacher, Callum Illott, Robert Schwartzman, who's going to test for Haas at Abu Dhabi. So the wealth of talent, Gary, that's coming from Formula 2 is really, really commendable. And I must say, the best that I've seen since perhaps the likes of Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton.
Yes, listen, we've had, you know, as you said, you know, the Formula 2 is really, it's been a great feeder series. It's brought in some fantastic drivers into F1, and you sort of, and I think, unfortunately, a lot of great drivers that haven't been able to make it to Formula 1 for whatever reason. So it's been a great championship. And, you know, just getting back to Mick Schumacher, you know, as you said, at the beginning of the year, he took a bit of criticism and maybe not aggressive, people expecting him to always be his dad and what have you and all the rest of it. But, you know, sort of just got on with the job there and got things under control and got himself into this position where he can now actually win this championship. So, you know, I think the guys are good. Tickton as well. You know, these guys are quick. We've got Schwartzman as well. There's so many quick guys. Zhao in the Renault Academy. There's a lot of guys that can really be doing something. So it's important that Formula One keeps itself together and actually tries to grow somewhat to give more of these guys an opportunity.
Yeah, I must say, you know, so many people coming through on our comments line over here, you know, happy to see that Mick Schumacher is going to be there as well. And lots of comments about the complexity of Formula One engines. Thanks very, very much. But we haven't done a show for 3 weeks, and I'm hyped. I'm super hyped. I don't think I'm going to sleep this evening. Anyway, let's move on, Gary. The Nürburgring, magnificent track. The last time we were there, 2013. It's unseasonal for us to be in Europe at this time of the year, but the whole of this year has been completely unseasonal. There's the circuit. There's some great overtaking opportunities, and one of my favorite corners, Gary, is because there are about 3 or 4 different lines that you can go there, and it's a steep decline, which puts a lot of pressure on the drivers.
Yeah, look, it does. It's a great track. I mean, lovely track to race on. You know, Nürburgring is just also, it's great just to be in the Nürburgring, obviously because of the longer circuit that they use for the endurance racing, etc. But yeah, I think that, as you said, the big thing is going to be the rain this weekend. It's an area that normally, even in normal summer in Europe, we have issues with the rain. Yes, you know, corners that allow for different lines and what have you, but it's still going to be a tough weekend with the amount of rainfall that is expected. So let's just hope that, you know, the biggest thing for me, first of all, is, you know, it's got to be safe, and the guys have got to be okay out there. He's up to a track that's up to spec, so there's no issue with that. But yes, it's just going to be a difficult weekend. And is it going to throw something different up for us? Who knows? I just keep on going back to that qualifying lap of Hamilton's in Austria in the rain, where it just, nobody could even let him. But it was just like, it was an unbelievable lap. So let's see how it goes and how everybody adapts to it this weekend. But yeah, I think we're certainly in for some wet running. And let's hope it changes things a bit for us. I think we all hope.
Yeah, I remember distinctly. I think it was Marcus Winkelhock at the Nürburgring in the pouring rain or whatever, and he was leading the race because he decided to go in the wet. And it was quite a memorable moment. I think it was in the Marussia as well. The whole thing about it is also, of course, safety. A lot of people are so critical. There's water on the track, and they say, "Oh, these cars can't go," or whatever. If there's too much water on the track, unfortunately, it just makes it undrivable. But the weather report, and I think we've got a weather report over here. I think on Sunday, there's a 60% chance of rain. But Gary, the big thing here is it's all of the data that these teams would have had in terms of when it comes to tires. This is, you need the grip. And the whole thing about it is you need to get that heat into the tires, into these Pirellis, and they're going to be using the softer compound of the three compounds, if that makes any sense to you. But these are the softer compounds of the hard, medium, and soft tires. So tire temperature, Gary, going to be critical around this track. If you're only at 12, 5, 6 degrees, maybe 15, 20 degrees track temperature.
Yeah, it's very, very low. You're right. And as you said, a lot of the times in Formula One, we spend Formula One races, in summer, wherever you are in the world. So yes, it is very, very low. You can sort of assume that we have winter testing at the beginning of every year as well. So the guys, it's just going to be it's a different dynamic to deal with, from tire pressures and just where these guys go with it all to get it to work in the temperatures that we live with. So as you said, everything's different this year. And be another weekend of just trying to find your way around. And again, this is where the sort of top drivers, top engineers, top teams excel in being able to find out, what to do and get the best results as quick as possible to get you, competitive.
Yeah, I must say it's going to be an intriguing race, Gary. It could well be a very, very historic race in the sense of the fact that Lewis Hamilton can equal Michael Schumacher's record. I mean, of course, he's going to break it as we go further. With everything that's happened with Honda and all of those things, it must be a very difficult time for the likes of Helmut Marko, Christian Horner, even Dietrich Mateschitz to try and keep a driver like Max Verstappen calm and collected to say, you know what, don't worry, we've got a contingency plan. I have heard that Mateschitz and Marko, and I assume Horner, knew that Honda were going to pull out a couple of, I won't say months ago, but perhaps a month or about 2 or 3 weeks prior to the signing of the Concord Agreement. How do you think Max's brain is going to work, or do you think he's just so cool that it's just put me in the car, let me go race?
I think he's going to be cool. At the end of the day, he's still a young guy. He's one of the most talented guys out there. I think everybody wants to see him and Hamilton sort of, in this head-to-head. And it just hasn't, unfortunately, been able to be like that. But I think that's sort of something that Formula One needs, in fact, to see these two guys have an opportunity to go head-to-head. And, at this point in time, there's nothing he can do about it. He's got to let the team do what they've got to do. And see where it all goes. And the other thing is, where does Max, in this period, where else does he go? He's got to stick with Red Bull and trust that Horner and the rest of the team are going to put something else together that's going to give them a package that's going to enable them to win Grand Prix. But right now for this weekend, I think once the helmet's on and once everything gets going for the weekend, he's not going to worry about all that. I think we're just going to see Max pushing and doing what he can in the wet weather and being the exciting driver that he is. But it's like anything in life. Nothing's guaranteed. But he wouldn't. I don't think he's going to battle to find a seat should anything happen, and you need to go somewhere else where we find a more competitive car. I think that he'll have a queue outside his motorhome looking for that signature.
No, that's for sure. Okay, so and I must agree with Vaughan. Although Vaughan, I will just tell you that the Formula, although the weather stat that I got is not from the Formula One satellites, just normal report. He says if the weather report is like it's been in Gauteng for the last few days, it stated 100% chance of rain. I got sunburnt. It's going to be a very, very dry race. Yeah, we can't rely on the weather reports. We'll just wait and see. I think it's going to be a cracker of a weekend regardless. So, our trivia question, Gary, and no one got this right. But I'm glad that nobody opened the Encyclopedia Britannica because, you know, if you do that, then it's too easy. Who was... Yeah,
I was just hoping you came back on screen because I can see right now I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know where you found that one, but I don't know.
Who was Albert Goldenberg? So on the 6th of October, a terrible tragedy happened at Watkins Glen in the United States. And Jackie Stewart had just clinched his 3rd world title, Gary. And they were meant to race at Watkins Glen and it was meant to be Jackie Stewart's 100th Grand Prix. And in free practice, his teammate, Anton Goldenberg, we know him as Francois Sever. Francois Sever, unfortunately, was killed in the practice session, and Jackie Stewart decided there and then that was the end of his Formula One career, and that is why he only ever raced in 99 races. There we go. Somebody said a French racing driver, which is close enough. But yeah, amazingly, we know him only as Francois Sever, but Albert Goldenberg is actually Francois Sever. See, I also learned something new this week.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. That was a good one.
That was a good one. Gary, I look forward to it, my friend. Maybe we'll catch each other up this weekend. I will... forget them. No, sorry. Yes, we'll have a mask. And I think maybe let's watch the race together or something. I think it would be quite cool.
Yeah, let's do that. I think it's going to be a good one. Listen, I think the weather is going to play a part. You know, as I said, it plays a part on a normal day there. Let's just hope we have a good race. And listen, Hamilton's still chasing the number, so let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very exciting. As always, we leave you with the obligatory Alfa Romeo picture of the day. Let's see if Fritz managed to get that up. And oh, goodness gracious, what lovely fingernails. Beautifully manicured. Wonderful stuff. There we go. Gary, always good to see you, my friend. I look forward to actually perhaps having a beer with you in person.
No, absolutely. Let's do it. I'm ready for that one.
Lovely. To Fritz and Henk, thank you very much, guys, for always putting such a fabulous show together for us. We really, really appreciate it. And to everybody who's come online and watched us, please share it to your friends as well. I'm sure they'll be interested in some of the comments that we have. Also, if you've got any other questions, post them up on the raceday.tv Facebook page, and we will answer them when we can get to them as quickly as possible. Also, we've got the WhatsApp group as well. Must I give out the number, Fritz? I can't remember the number. Oh, it's on the Race Day TV page. There we go. So there's the WhatsApp group there as well. You can join that, and then of course from there everything will get passed on to us. So listen, thank you very, very much for your time, Gary. Always good to see you, my buddy. We'll catch you on the weekend. From me, Sasha Martininga, and him, Gary Formato, and Fritz and Henk at Main Control. Thanks very much. This has been F1 PitBox. We'll catch you again next Thursday at 7 p.m. Take care. Ciao, ciao.